back to the channel, guys. It is a balmy 39 degrees Celsius, which is what, like 105 Fahrenheit or something here for our Canada Day, Independence Day weekend. And I finally got a little bit of time, which means I can get started on something that I've wanted to do for a while now. If you saw my last video, you know I've been tackling the interior there. Did a few interior upgrades with the Alcantara stuff, console lid, etc. So these seats are going to make a nice addition to that. I've got the driver's seat here, I've got the passenger seat right there, and I've got the rear seats over there. So these are three very different things, and they have very different processes as to how to do them. I have a plan for, I know what I'm going to do for the drivers, I know what I'm going to do for the passengers. I have a plan for the rears that I'm pretty sure is going to work. But today we're just going to start with part one, which is going to be the driver's seat. So before I unbolt anything, I'm just going to go off camera for a little bit and give this thing a nice deep steam clean, because as you can see there's a little bit of staining or something on the bottom there and some headrest sweat from the last guy, which is kind of nasty. So I'm going to go clean that up and I'll be right back. Okay, so let's get this seat out. So there's one bolt on each corner. These are 14mm bolts. You're going to want to leave your power connected, so leave your battery connected for now, because you're going to need to move your seat forward and back for this. And we're going to start with these bolts here. So this is a 14mm bolt, but as you can see, it's seriously corroded because the previous owner, I guess, must have driven this car in the winter a lot. The back ones are okay, but front cars that have been winter driven, sometimes you get in, you know, you knock your boots and the snow piles up here and it corrodes everything. But that's going to be a bit of an issue maybe. I've already started to soak it in penetrating fluid. So we'll start with the fronts and we'll get to the backs, just in case we have a problem with the front. So take a look at this. I had to use an impact gun with a strip socket remover, plus I filed down and wire brushed that nut. Also, I could get out this rusted bit there. Super lucky, because my worst fear was that this bolt would break in there and be stuck in the frame, but that didn't happen. Hopefully it doesn't happen on the next one either. And I'm going to make sure I replace this with one of the bolts from the STI when I put it back in. So that's one. I'll go ahead and do the rest of them and then come back on camera. So before I pull these ones off, I'm just going to mention you're going to have these plastic caps that cover the rear bolts here, and you just pry them off. They come off with no with just some force. All right, so I just took those back bolts off, and I can go ahead and lean this thing back now. There we go. So it's a nice view of under the seats. At this point, I'm going to want to go ahead and actually, before I unplug the battery, I'm going to arrange the seat so that, using the power seat control, so that when I want to take it out, it's nice and compressed. So I'm going to bring the back as far forward as I can and try and get the thing as small as possible so I can pull it out of the car. All right, so it's the seat lean back. You can see all the controls under here. We've got a lot of airbag connectors and power seat connectors, etc. So lots of stuff. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and disconnect the battery now, and then we'll come back to the connector. All right, so you're going to want to take your time disconnecting these things. I used one of these trim disconnect tools for those little parts that you need to really get a flathead or something into. And then notable connectors. So this one here, plugged on right there. It was very difficult to get to with this stuck up there. So what I did is I just went ahead, stuck my thing in there and pulled the whole section down. And then I was able to get to the back here, stuck a little piece of that thing in there, pried it up, and was able to slide them apart, no problem. So that's just a little tip for you. And then the other one was this green connector here. Go ahead and push that green section up as hard as you can, and that'll allow you to slide everything out. Don't try and force it any other way. So that's for this one, I believe. And then the rest of them are pretty easy. So I'm going to go ahead and pull the seat out and see what matches up. All right, that is a heavy seat. So one tip for getting this out, and I didn't do it myself, but take this headrest off and you'll have a little bit more clearance to take the seat out. Anyway, looks pretty bad in there. I'm going to go ahead and grab a vacuum and get at that, and then bring the STI seat in. Okay, so what I've got here is the Legacy driver's seat and the STI driver's seat. And we can get a good look at the guts of these things so that you have exactly the right idea of what this is going to entail. So what you see here is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 connectors. I have powered seats, which not everybody has. If you don't have powered seats, you don't have to deal with some of these things. The ones that are going to be common to both powered and unpowered are this one here, which is the seatbelt connector. This one here, which is also the seatbelt connector. They actually run to the same thing, and I'll show you that in a second. This one here, which is the heated seats, and this one here, which is the airbag. This is the powered seat one. So if you don't have that, you'll find a black connector that comes out of your floor, because I think unpowered seats still have the connector that goes this way, but they don't have this part. So fun fact about that. Anyway, here's the STI side. And you've got the same connectors, they just look a little different. Well, one of them looks a little different. You've got your seatbelt connector here, which for some reason is only one, whereas this one is two. You've got your seat heaters, and this is your airbag. So when I dissected that STI for my other video, I removed the cable from the harness, or the harness from the car side. And this is the connector that plugs into the airbag. So because I have this car side connector from the STI, I have two options. I could stick this in here and have a nice solid connection there. And because I'm going to cut here, I can just go ahead and take the seatbelt or the airbag connector there and solder it onto here. And then I have a perfect adapter that plugs into the STI seat and into the car body. Now, obviously most of you probably aren't going to have this. So what you need to do, just take this connector, cut it off, solder it onto the STI seat base, and that'll be the only cut and solder connection you need to make. From there, so we're going to go ahead and remove this bolt here that holds the seatbelt mounts in. So I've got a T50 Torx bit here. So just like the legacy seat, I just took off the STI one, and I'm just going to go ahead and thread that wire out from the connector here and remove it that way. And then I'll thread the legacy seat through and connect it where the STI was. So now you can see I've bolted the legacy seatbelt onto there, and I've threaded the wires through, and now I've got my connector and where's the other one? Connector here. Second thing we need to do that I forgot to cover when I was looking at the connectors before was that this connector here is a connector for the rails here, and that's like a position sensor for the seat. And what it does is, if the seat is too far forward, too close to the airbag, it prevents the airbag from deploying. So this is required to not have an airbag light and not have airbag issues. And all we have to do is, because it's a position sensor, we just have to move it onto the rails over here. I don't really care if it's on the rails, to be honest. I think I'm probably just gonna like zip tie it to this thing or some type of mount that's in a similar position on the STI seat to where it was on the legacy seat. So to get this off, you have to, you can see it's riveted on there. There's one rivet and the other rivet's on the other side. So what you need to do is drill those out, but I'm just going to remove these bolts, get rid of that bracket, give myself a little bit more space, and then we'll get to work drilling those out. Once that is drilled out, we'll just move this over, like I said, zip tie it on there, run the connector to where the other ones are, and that will be, yeah, that'll be all the work we need to do to get this over to there, once I solder that. Anyway, let's get to it. So the rivets drilled out really easily. Moved the sensor over to, quick measurements, about the same area on the seat here. Ran the wire up and around and just zip tied that in place. So it's looking pretty good now. Last thing we need to do is snip and cut that and create an adapter. So I'll take that over to the bench and get started. So I've gone ahead and made my little adapter here. That's just going to go right onto my STI seat, and then the other end I'll plug into the car. Again, if you don't have this, just snip this airbag connector off the LGT seat right there, and then cut this one and solder this onto the yellow wire. So I think that's about it. I'm going to go ahead and put this seat back in the car, wire everything up, and see if it works. Okay, So, moment of truth. I've hooked the battery back up. I've plugged everything in. I've got the seat sitting in there. It's not bolted down yet, just in case there is some kind of issue. And I'm sitting real far forward here. So, let's hope there's no airbag lights. Yes! Love it when that light goes away. Sweet! Well, I mean, I'm gonna have to reset all my radio and stuff, but it looks like that worked. It's kind of late right now, so I'm gonna take it out tomorrow morning, and let's make sure this sound goes away first. Yeah, that's perfect. So I'm gonna bolt everything down properly tonight, and then take it out tomorrow morning for a test drive, and that should work. All right, so it's the next day. Seats are looking good. As you can see, no lights on the dashboard. And I'm gonna go for a drive. There you have it. That's everything that's involved in installing the driver's side STI seat. The next step will be the passenger seat here, and then finally those rear seats in the back. The passenger side is gonna be a lot more involved. It involves taking apart this whole thing and dealing with a lot of airbag lights and stuff that I don't want to risk dealing with before I have to do a vehicle inspection, because I'm changing provinces. And the rear ones, I have a plan that involves maybe completely reskinning them. We'll see how it goes. But that's it. Yeah, those will be part 2 and part 3 of this video, which I'm not going to be doing until I get to my new place. As you can see, sold. So probably next month I'll be in that new place to get everything, get all the rest of that stuff done. But until then, make sure you guys give me a like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll catch you on the next one.